Thousands of people go missing around the world every year, under a wide array of circumstances. Some are victims of foul play, some choose to disappear to start a new life somewhere else, and others get lost in the wilderness, never to be seen again. Luckily, most people who disappear are found alive and well just a short while after they're reported missing, while some cases take much longer to solve. Number 10. When someone goes missing in the wilderness, rescuers know that they have a limited time to find them before the elements start to take their toll. In most of these types of cases, missing people are usually found quickly, but if they remain lost for more than a week, the outlook starts to become grim. One such case involves a 27-year-old woman named Tiffany Slayton, who originally came from Jeffersonville, Georgia. She's always had a love for the outdoors, especially foraging and gardening in her spare time. She's also a keen archer who won a national medal, and in April of 2025, she was working as a dialysis technician. But her current contract had ended, and so she decided to go on a camping trip. She traveled to the Sierra in California, where she decided to go hiking and set her sights on making it to Mono Hot Springs. She was in regular contact with her family and told her father that when she got home, she was planning on enrolling in medical school. By the 20th of April, she'd made it to the Huntington Lake area, and once there, she called her parents to update them on her trip. She'd been in the wild alone for a few weeks by this point, and was supposed to join a conference call with one of her students the next day, but she failed to do so. Her parents were told about this, and they immediately started to worry, since Tiffany is known to be diligent and punctual. When they still hadn't heard from her that night, they contacted the police and reported her as missing. Witnesses in the area reported seeing Tiffany on the 24th of April in the Shaver Lake area. She had her electric bike and stroller with her, but it wasn't known which direction she walked in after the sighting. Other hikers stated that they saw her in a tent in the Tamarack Snow Park campsite, and hence the search started there with the aid of horses, helicopters, and snowmobiles. The areas between Shaver Lake and Huntington were thoroughly searched, but no sign of Tiffany was found. Then, just as hope was dwindling that she'd be found, the owner of the Vermilion Valley Resort noticed something strange outside one of his cabins while checking on his properties. He knocked on the door and, to his surprise, Tiffany answered, stating that she'd gotten injured and lost, and the man contacted the police, who relayed the good news to her parents. By the time she was rescued, she had endured 13 snowstorms before she found the cabin, which had purposely been left unlocked in case someone got lost in the storm. She since stated that she'll never go on a holiday for longer than 3 days again. Number 9. When 20-year-old Magdy Sanchez disappeared on the 25th of March, 2025, witnesses stated that they saw her walking out of the Nova Hotel in Bushwick, Brooklyn, New York at around 9:20 a.m., after which her whereabouts became unknown. It's known that she was spending the night at the hotel, and when she left, she was alone. She was seen carrying her handbag, and when CCTV from the hotel was checked, it showed Magdy walking away from the hotel, proving that she didn't get into a vehicle. After she was reported as missing, one of her friends came forward to report that they had seen Magdy for the last time on the 25th of March, and her family added that they last had contact with her on the 24th. The last time that she was known to have spoken to anyone was on the 29th of March, when she sent one of her contacts a text message, though it was never revealed what this message was about. Her family told investigators that she was known to visit Hudson County and that she may be in New York City. They added that she didn't own a car and likely didn't have any other way to get around other than by foot or public transport. She was in the habit of keeping in touch with her friends and family, so when she failed to let them know where she was, they became concerned and filed a missing person report with the police. When no leads could be found to indicate where she may have gone, the Clifton Police Department took to social media and posted her description on several platforms in case someone had seen her. They stated that she has several tattoos, such as the words "God is" on her left arm and "Ada" on one foot, the year 1973 on the other foot, and the word "Brats" on her other arm. She also has a tattoo of a butterfly on her stomach and the word "Princess" on her chest. Witnesses who last saw her were unable to state what she was wearing at the time, and before long, all leads had dried up, and it was feared that Magdy's case would go cold, and she'd remain missing without explanation. Her disappearance was seen as strange, since she clearly walked away from the hotel under her own volition, but had, for reasons unknown, not contacted any of her friends or family, and must have known that they'd be worried and desperately looking for her to ensure that she was safe. Investigators urged members of the public to contact them if she was spotted, but no one else came forward with any new information, and searches of the areas where she was last seen proved to be fruitless. For nearly a month, nothing else was found, and there was still no sign of Magdy. Some people started to speculate she'd fallen victim to foul play, but then on the 23rd of March, the Clifton Police Department revealed via Facebook that she'd been found and returned to her family safely. Number 8. The case of the disappearance of 22-year-old Julian Otto from East Lynne in Pretoria, South Africa, in 2024 is a strange one indeed, and if it wasn't for a passing dog walker, he'd very likely not be alive today. After he went missing, it was discovered that Julian had called for a cab service to take him to Wonderboom, but before the car reached its destination, he canceled the trip for unknown reasons. That was the last contact that anyone had with him, and his family stated they last spoke to him on the 29th of July, and stated nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary at the time. But they did find it strange that he called for an Uber and then canceled the ride, leaving them wondering if he'd changed his plans or something had happened to him. When 2 days had passed without any word from Julian, they started to worry, and a drone was used to search for him in the area where he was last seen, but to no avail. No further witnesses came forward to report that they had seen him, and it started to seem as though he'd vanished into thin air. They also never revealed why he was traveling to Wonderboom, or if anyone in the area may have had something to do with his disappearance. Since South Africa is one of the crime capitals of the world, it's always worrying when someone goes missing, as there's always the possibility that they met with foul play, such as a kidnapping, robbery, or worse. Those who knew Julian started to worry about his well-being, but all efforts to find him had been exhausted without any clues being found. Then, 3 days after he disappeared, a dog walker was in the area of Montana Park when his dog started acting strangely. It stopped at a nearby stormwater drain and started barking incessantly. Despite the man's best efforts, he couldn't get the dog to leave, and so he peered inside, and what he saw left him shocked. Down in the drain, Julian was desperately trying to get the attention of passers-by, but thanks to the noise of the city, his cries were drowned out. The man could tell that he'd been in the drain for some time since he was looking worse for wear, and he contacted authorities. A member of the Centerville Firefighting Association stated that he and his colleagues were busy fighting a blaze nearby when they were contacted and asked to assist with a rescue from a stormwater drain, which he found surprising. Rescuers stated that if he'd been in the drain for just one more day, he likely would have not survived, since he was already in bad condition by the time that he was found. Number 7. 64-year-old Abdul Raman knows firsthand how terrifying it can be to get lost in the wilderness alone, and he is one of the lucky people who was eventually tracked down and rescued. But many people believed he would remain missing forever. Abdul hails from Pewaukee in Wisconsin, and on the 23rd of February 2025, he traveled to the El Yunque National Forest in Puerto Rico with his family, where they planned to do some hiking together. But at some point, he got separated from the rest of the group. But at first, they weren't too concerned, as it was assumed that he'd simply chosen another trail to hike on. But when he still hadn't returned by 4 p.m. that afternoon, his family contacted the authorities. They stated that a few members of the group had gone off the trail to take a few photos, and when they returned, Abdul was nowhere to be seen. They waited patiently for him to rejoin them, but he never did. His son-in-law, Hunzai, became so distressed at the fact that Abdul was missing that he started running through the woods and didn't stop for a full hour, though he had nothing to show for his efforts as he was unable to find him. Investigators gathered as much information from the family as they could, in order to ascertain where the search should start from. Nothing could be done that night, as it had already started to get dark, and Abdul's family only grew more concerned as they realized he would have to spend the night in the wilderness by himself. The following day, a search party was organized, but his family started to give up hope that he'd be found, since he had a heart condition, for which he regularly took medication. And without it, there was a real possibility that he would suffer a medical emergency. 6 separate rescue attempts were formed, and they started scouring the areas where they believed Abdul might have walked to. When nothing was found on the first day, drones and search dogs were brought in, but to no avail. Abdul's life was now hanging in the balance, and researchers knew that if he wasn't found soon, the search effort would likely become a recovery mission. But then, after being missing for 3 days, a group of rescuers came across Abdul and relayed the message to his family that he was alive. He revealed that he had walked off the main path to take some photos when he lost his footing and fell off a cliff. When he realized that he'd spend the night in the forest, he tried to forage for food but had very little luck, and before long he was getting hungry. He also struggled to find water, and after being brought to safety, agreed that he wouldn't have lasted much longer on his own. He reported that he hadn't slept for 2 days since it had been raining, and he decided to just keep walking, which is why he was found a 15 hours walk away from where he was last seen. Number 6. 53-year-old Thomas Manuzzac was last seen on the 30th of July, 1999, while he was traveling to Newport in Oregon. While on his trip, he contacted his mother from the road at least twice a week to let his family know that he was safe. Thomas was living with his mother in Doyle, California at the time, and they were very close, which is why he would regularly keep her updated after he left. But the last call that she received was on that day when he stated that he was at a truck stop in Twin Falls, Idaho. His family would later tell investigators that he was driving a brown 1970 Ford van with California plates. But despite this information, they were unable to track him down, and it would be decades before they learned what his fate was. This behavior wasn't strange for Thomas, as his family had grown used to him traveling around the country in his van. He would also sleep in the vehicle by the side of the highways at night, though he preferred to explore areas that were off the beaten path. He had a good cachet of camping equipment and fought off loneliness by picking up hitchhikers along the way. He was a free spirit who enjoyed forging his own path in life, but this contributed directly to his disappearance. Then, in 2024, Thomas's sister came across a photo in the USA Today newspaper of a man who'd been taken to the St. Francis Medical Center in Linwood before being transferred to a different hospital in Los Angeles. The report stated that staff at the hospital had attempted to find his family, but since he was no longer able to speak, they couldn't get any information out of him. They printed the photo in hopes that someone would recognize him and provide more information on his past. It's believed that he became nonverbal thanks to his poor treatment for his diabetes, for which he was required to take 2 insulin shots every day. Since he failed to keep up this treatment, his health declined quickly, and it's believed that he may have spent some time in a diabetic coma. It's known that he renewed his diabetic medication in a few towns that he was traveling through over the years, but he'd failed to stick to the routine as required. It was also discovered that he hadn't been cashing his disability checks and hadn't used his medical card for some time. When Thomas's sister recognized him, she immediately contacted the Lassen County Sheriff's Office and explained that Thomas had been missing for 23 years, but that she believed the man in the photo to be him. They then contacted the Los Angeles Police Department's missing person unit, and Thomas's fingerprints were taken. When the results came back, it was confirmed that Thomas had finally been found, and his family was overjoyed. But soon they received news that left them shocked. In 1993, Thomas was arrested on a serious offense that required him to register as an offender. He was incarcerated for 3 years, and upon his release, he failed to register and decided to abscond instead. He then traveled to Oregon, where he continued his nomadic lifestyle until he was found sitting on a curb alone one day, clearly in need of medical assistance. That was when he was brought to the hospital, leading to his family coming across his photo. Number 5. On the 22nd of June, 2024, 34-year-old Lucas Mccclitish decided to go for a short hike that should have only lasted about 3 hours. But he then got lost in the wilderness and was unable to find his way back to civilization. Lucas, who lives in Boulder Creek, California, left his house and set out on the hike with just a Leatherman multi-tool, his hat, and a flashlight, since he didn't plan on being out in the woods for very long. He never imagined that he would need food and water, but in the days that followed, he wished he'd brought at least a snack, since he had to rely on the land for sustenance. It's not been revealed whether Thomas was reported missing or not, but soon after he entered the woods, he realized that he was lost. He stated that thanks to the fires in the area, he was unable to recognize the landmarks that he usually used to find his way around, and before he knew it, he couldn't figure out which direction he was supposed to take. For the next 10 days, he did what he could to survive. At one point, he came across a waterfall in the Santa Cruz Mountains and was able to collect enough water to get by. He made sure to drink at least a gallon of water every day, which also helped to stave off his hunger. He used one of his boots to collect the water and stumbled across some berries that he then picked and ate, buying him a lot more time. He fashioned a bed out of leaves and later stated he was never too concerned, but kept calling for help from time to time in case someone was close by. But he did sustain a small injury and became slightly concerned when he realized that he was being followed by a mountain lion. Surprisingly, the lion never approached him and chose to keep its distance. Thomas said it felt as though someone was watching over him, and hence he never became too frightened of the animal. For 10 days, he managed to find enough resources to survive, despite having very minimal equipment. Then, on the 21st of June, he was lying in his makeshift campsite in the Foreman Creek area, and a group of hikers in the area heard someone calling for help, and they notified the authorities. Members of the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Department, State Parks, CAL FIRE, and the Boulder Creek Fire Department responded and were able to confirm that the voice was indeed Thomas's. But they were unable to get to his location since the area contains steep terrain and massive boulders that obscured him from their view, and it didn't help that he was wearing all black clothing. They resorted to using speakers to pick up Thomas's voice, and with the use of a GPS device, they were able to pinpoint his exact location. Park rangers then sent out search dogs, and Thomas was found close to the creek that he'd been collecting water from. Number 4. When 26-year-old Benjamin Ross, a trainee barrister from Wigan in the Greater Manchester area of England, went missing in Palma, Spain in July of 2024, his mother Felix desperately tried to find him, but was unsuccessful. Ben had traveled to the island to take a well-deserved break from his studies, but while there, he was involved in an accident that left him stranded and unable to get in contact with his family back in Britain. Just a few weeks after arriving in Majorca, he was robbed while on a beach in the area, and his cell phone was stolen, leaving him with no way of contacting his loved ones. His mother told detectives that she received a strange email from him, which caused her some concern. During the robbery, his bag containing his ID, iPad, wallet, and keys was also taken, and since he'd only been living in the area for a short while, he was unable to find his way home. He then went to a local police station where he reported the robbery, and he remained there for a few hours before eventually heading back to his residence. But he once again got lost and only found his apartment later that night. But once he arrived, his knocks went unanswered by his roommates, and he had to resort to breaking the lock on the door to get inside. He was distressed and glad to finally be in familiar surroundings. The next day, he explained to his roommates what had happened, but they didn't seem too concerned, as they were more upset about the broken lock on the door. Over the next few days, tensions only grew, and they treated him badly, despite his assurance that he would pay for the lock to be fixed. Knowing that his family would be worried about him, since he'd been out of contact for some time, he tried to buy a new cell phone, but was unable to get a phone or SIM card without his ID, which had been stolen. When he returned to the apartment, he became depressed due to his roommates' continuing bad treatment, and ceased communication with anyone. In the meantime, Felix had contacted the Foreign Office after not hearing from Ben for a while, after which she caught a flight to Majorca to look for him. She told investigators about the strange email she'd received that was sent from an address she'd never seen before, and that someone who may have been pretending to be Ben explained that he'd been robbed and that he no longer cared what happened to him. She then started knocking on doors all over the island in hopes that someone had seen Ben, but she had no luck. A search was conducted by the police and was led by the homicide squad, which is normal practice in Spain. 10 days after she started searching for Ben, Felix announced that he had traveled to the British consulate, and she was able to reunite with him there. He stated that on the day of the robbery, he'd applied for a European work number, and once this was taken care of, he decided to go to the beach for a swim. He spent some time in the water, and when he returned to the beach, he was shocked to find that all of his belongings had been stolen. He added that he'd been found in the nick of time, as his roommates had decided to kick him out of the apartment for damaging the door. Number 3. Australia's wilderness is a harsh and unforgiving place in which no one would want to get lost. The country is known for its dry and rugged conditions, and many people who have lost their way were never found or eventually succumbed to the elements. This makes the fact that 77-year-old Paul Kier was found alive after spending days lost in the wilds of Burham Heads in Queensland, Australia, all the more remarkable, and at the time it was hailed by investigators as a Christmas miracle. Paul and his wife were on vacation in the area when he went missing, and surprisingly there are no details available on what he was doing when he disappeared, though most people assumed that he decided to go on a hike and got lost. His wife reported him as missing when he didn't return to their holiday accommodation, and she was unable to get a hold of him. As soon as this was done, the authorities set out to look for Paul, but weather conditions hampered their efforts as it had started to rain and humidity levels were very high. Concerns for his well-being only escalated when it was revealed that he suffered from a medical condition. A command post was set up from where professional searchers and volunteers of the area started their efforts to find Paul. While some searchers focused on the wilderness, others went to search in residential areas. They knocked on doors and asked residents to check their exterior buildings, such as sheds, in case Paul had taken shelter there, but no clues to his whereabouts were found. Locals who spoke to the media stated that they were very concerned for Paul's safety, since the wilderness in the area can be unforgiving, and since temperatures were soaring. He needed to be found quickly before his chances of survival started plummeting. His wife told investigators that Paul was dressed in a t-shirt, long shorts, sneakers, and a hat. Hence, he was ill-prepared to spend a prolonged time out in the wild, since daytime temperatures were high, and at night the rain continued to fall. She added that due to his medical conditions, he sometimes becomes confused, and this may have led to him becoming disoriented and lost, unable to find his way home. But she remained hopeful that he would be found, despite the lack of clues at the time. For 4 days, searchers and volunteers scoured the dense bushland of the surrounding area, and with every passing day, the chances of finding Paul alive were dwindling. He had no food or water with him, and was by no means an experienced outdoorsman. This, coupled with his age, meant that time was crucial, but no one knew which direction he had walked in before vanishing. Just as everyone started fearing the worst, news was received that Paul was found alive, though he wasn't in the best condition. After becoming lost, he ventured ever further into the dense bush, and was eventually found about 5 miles from the spot where he was last seen. He'd managed to survive by drinking water from puddles created by the falling rain, and on occasion, trying to catch raindrops by just keeping his mouth open. Number 2. We're all amazed when we read about a person who's finally been found after being missing for years or even decades. And the case of the disappearance of 20-year-old Audrey Backberg is no exception. On the 7th of July, 1977, Audrey was living in Reedsburg, Wisconsin, when she decided to travel to Indianapolis. She started her journey with the family's babysitter, and the pair hitchhiked to Madison before catching a Greyhound bus to Indianapolis. Upon arriving there, they got off the bus, and the babysitter would later report that she saw Audrey walking around a corner at the bus stop, after which she promptly disappeared. She failed to make contact with her family, and no one knew where she had gone. The babysitter contacted Audrey's family and informed them that she was unable to find her, and a missing person case was opened. She was married and had 2 children, and so the fact that she remained out of touch caused great concern, since it was believed that she'd never abandon her children. But when it was discovered that Audrey had contacted the police just days before she left Reedsburg and filed a criminal complaint against her husband, whom she stated had been abusive towards her. The couple had gotten married when Audrey was just 15, and before she left, he had physically harmed her and threatened to end her life. She then went to the woolen mill where she was working, picked up her paycheck, and set out towards Indianapolis. The babysitter, who was only 14 years old at the time, stated that she had second thoughts about the trip while they were traveling on the bus, but Audrey refused to help her get home, and upon reaching the bus terminal, simply walked away without explanation, leaving the babysitter to fend for herself. After she was reported missing, many efforts were made to locate Audrey or to find witnesses who had seen her, but eventually the case went cold when no leads could be found, and Audrey's fate remained unknown. Then, in 2025, investigators decided to take a fresh look at the case, and it was handed over to a sheriff's office so that a comprehensive review could be conducted. All the information that was available was double-checked, and those involved were interviewed once more. The detective in charge of the review process then discovered that Audrey's sister had created an Ancestry.com account, which seemed as good as any place to start. This led him to discover new information, including an address where Audrey may be living. He contacted the local sheriff's department and requested that an officer visit the address, just in case Audrey was there. This was done, and 10 minutes later the request was made. The detective was talking to Audrey on the phone. She stated that she decided to move on with her life after leaving her hometown, and that she never had any intention of returning. She was fed up with her husband's abuse and decided to start a new life elsewhere. She added that she'd never regretted her decision, and according to the detective, she sounded happy and content with her new life. Number 1. Usually, when someone goes missing, they're reported missing by a friend or family member. But after 48-year-old Lovisa Schoberg disappeared in Australia, it was thanks to a report by a rental car company that investigators started searching for her. Lovisa, who's better known as Kiki, was living in the Snowy Mountains in New South Wales in Australia at the time, and she was an avid photographer who often traveled to the Kosciuszko National Park to practice her hobby. She originally came from Sweden and decided to relocate to Australia to study fine arts and to pursue a career in photography. She settled in the Snowy Mountain area in 2018, where she started advocating for the protection of wild horses living in the area. On the 5th of October, 2024, she hired a Mitsubishi Outlander and traveled to the park again, where she managed to do some hiking while looking for good areas, animals, and items to photograph. She left the rental car company's premises at around 7 a.m. that day, and after she was reported as missing, it was revealed that she hadn't spoken to anyone she knew for at least a week, though it's not been revealed why this was the case. She was supposed to return before the 21st of October since she was supposed to return the car that day. And when this didn't happen, staff at the company contacted the police after they failed to make contact with her. A search was immediately started, and the rental car was eventually found at the Kier courthouse, which is located in an old gold mining town in the national park. The vehicle contained no clues as to what Kiki's plans were, but also showed no signs of foul play. It was assumed that she'd set out on her hike as planned, and that she then got lost or suffered an injury that rendered her immobile. Searchers started the effort on foot, but eventually helicopters, horses, planes, and drones were used to scour the park. Volunteers from the surrounding community also aided in the search of the Snowy Mountains, but hope started dwindling and no sign of Kiki was found for the first 5 days. Typically, this is the point at which many searches are called off, since the chances of the missing person being found become very slim. Searchers stated that anyone who was not on horseback in the area would have found the going very tough since they were finding it hard to navigate the rugged terrain and overgrown brush on their horses. Causing further concern was the fact that temperatures were dipping below freezing at night. Rain had been falling, and it was springtime, so venomous copperhead snakes were very active in the area. Their concerns were justified when almost 2 weeks after going missing, Kiki was found suffering from a copperhead snake bite, but alive. She stated that the snake had bit her 4 days before she was found, and understandably started believing she'd never make it out of the mountains alive. When she was finally located on a trail in the park, she was treated by paramedics who confirmed she had been bitten by a snake and that she was very lucky to have survived for so long. Kiki was dehydrated and traumatized by the event and found in a dazed and confused state, but she was then transported to the Kuma District Hospital where she received treatment and made a full recovery. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.